Hello and welcome to the Just Interesting podcast, the podcast that's not too interesting, but it's not boring, it's just interesting enough. And we are a trio this week. So, I, Martin, am joined by Robin and Alex. How are you, respectively?
Hello. Sorry.
It's the respectively.
Respectively. Well, the thing is, usually when I say this, I say, how are you? Then it goes, both speak at the same time.
Yeah.
So if I go respectively, we might get some kind of order to this podcast.
No,
at the beginning.
it was very wise of you, I thought.
Yes,
very wise.
yeah,
Just,
yeah.
I loved it.
unexpected
I loved
formal.
How long have we been doing this? 3, 4 years, and that's the first time any of us have thought to say that. I like it.
Yeah, it might become a thing. Yeah. But how are you? Speak at the same time.
I don't know who you mean.
Happy to be here.
Good. Is that a Scouse accent you've put on there, Robin?
Maybe. I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, it's almost slightly Les Dennis there. Yeah.
I am excited to talk about richest people.
Rich bastards. Yeah, exactly.
Rich kids. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how about you, Alex? You had a good week this week?
Yeah, no, it's all good. All good this week. I've been working on a little project for the channel, which is exciting, which hopefully will see the light of day very, very soon. So that's exciting.
Fantastic.
And I'm also excited to speak about the world's richest people and, kind of live vicariously imagining if it was me,
Well, maybe one day it could be. If our, subscribers continue to grow, then, you could be one of the richest people in the YouTube. In the YouTube. So
I could be invited to those. I could be invited to those boxing matches and and get shit kicked out of me by another YouTuber. That sounds like a really good reward for becoming a popular YouTuber.
That's the dream. Well, I went to it sounds bad, doesn't it? But I went to a Snapchat event. Like a party.
Snapchat event.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you can just imagine.
It was over quickly.
Well, yeah. So there was like a panel and like some people speaking and stuff, and it was a bit like, okay, right, fine, whatever. Because I don't really deal with Snapchat much in my everyday dealings with things. Anyway, and then in the evening there was like a party thing, and you can just imagine the type of people that were there. It was very much like, oh my goodness, I'm just surrounded by people posing for Snapchats constantly.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, enough of that. Today, we're talking about the richest people in history. When we think about rich people today, don't we? You think of the likes of the Elon Musks of this world, the Bill Gates.
Oh, yes.
But of course, there are people before those richest people who were also incredibly rich. And sometimes their riches couldn't be quantified as riches can be today. And I know in your case, Alex, that's going to potentially be the case. So rich, you can't even tell how rich they actually are. But anyway, we'll get onto that in a little bit. But before we do that, it would be great to get any comments that the audience, the viewers at home have sent in and have a read through them.
Hold on a second, Martin. Are you really not going to have a riddle for us today?
Oh, fine. Do you really want a riddle?
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely riddle, please. Yeah.
Okay.
And not just us, Martin. The audience love it. They love this section of the podcast. They can't get enough of them.
We probably get the most positive feedback on the riddle.
Everyone's clamoring for a riddle.
Perhaps. Oh God, the pressure's on now. Okay. This is the riddle for today.
Yeah.
I am a word of letters 3. Add 2 and fewer there will be. What am I? I'm a word of letters 3. Add 2 and fewer there will be.
Okay.
I think it's logical.
Okay,
it makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I think
it's not crazy difficult. I think
I've got an answer.
I like the rhyming. I like that.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
cool. So hold that thought, people at home. What have you got for us? Let us know in the comments. And in the meantime, we will discuss your comments or our favourite of your comments from the last week. So, what have we got this week?
Well, I've got a comment. So this was on our last podcast where we discussed the Mexican aliens situation that was going on, where there was a Mexican Congress that was discussing aliens, and there were some aliens that were shown, and they were shown by someone who was kind of known for past alien hoaxes. So I've gone for a comment from NanoGlitch6693 who says, great video. I don't believe these are legit either, but just for conspiracy's sake, let's say someone had legitimately discovered actual alien mummies and word was getting out, but a government really wanted to cover it up. One method they could use would be to poison the well by having an agent pretend smuggle samples to someone who is already a known hoaxer, who will then go on and broadcast this discovery louder than anyone else. Everyone knows this guy has a history of similar hoaxes in the past, so now nobody believes it, and every time they hear about alien mummies in Peru, they just think, oh yeah, that guy with another hoax. It's an interesting idea, you know?
I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I like that theory, yeah.
What better way to cover up alien mummies than fake alien mummies?
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hate it when people come up with that kind of argument, because it's just like makes me question everything.
It's a good idea, but it is also one of those things where it's very easy to do as a conspiracy theorist, or it's just we've got to go one layer deeper, and there's always a layer deeper. You know?
The inception of conspiracy theories.
It's I'm not equating it to something like flat Earth, but it's always like, well, why would NASA be covering that up? And then it's like, to hide the lizards underground. You know, there's always another layer. Yeah. But do you know what? I like it. I like that as a reason.
Oh
yeah. It's one of those ones.
No, it's scarily plausible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Robin, what have you gone for this week? What stand out to you?
I've got a comment from the same episode about are these real alien mummies, but it's got nothing to do with them. It's from Matthew Flower 8921. And in that episode, I think, Martin, you talked about a time that you've been recognized in response to Alex saying that you'd been recognized last week. And Matthew Flower says, I think Martin might have been talking about the time that I recognized him in Soho in London. It was nothing but a great interaction. He was very nice. And I'm still here listening years later.
Wow.
So there you go.
I am pleasantly surprised, Matthew. I'm pleasantly surprised that you're still listening, and also that it wasn't a bad interaction with me. I'm always a little bit conscious that I wouldn't come across as shy and standoffish. And I'm glad that wasn't the case. I mean, I'm really glad. Martin, and nice to hear from you as well.
I know that you get recognized on a daily basis from Just Interesting. Obviously, you know, we can
from you two.
We can barely leave our houses for all the fame.
Rapping on the door. Yeah.
But do you remember this interaction with Matt?
I do remember it well. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I do. It was on was it Berwick Street? I think it was Berwick Street.
I mean, don't dox
near the market. Yeah, it was by like a food store in Berwick Street. Yeah, I remember it. Nice. Yeah. No, really nice to hear from you, and thank you so much for still being here these years later. That's amazing. That's really awesome.
That is amazing.
That's probably the best bit. Still here. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's true. What about you, Martin? You got a comment that you'd like to respond?
Yeah, well, I've got a comment from Adam Barnett, and I do wonder. And Adam, do correct us if this is wrong, but is this the Adam Barnett that we used to work with? I'm not sure, but do let us know, Adam, if that's the case. Could be a different Adam Barnett, but anyway, if it is you, thank you so much for listening for all these years, and I really hope you're well. And Adam says, we need more UFO and conspiracy episodes, boys. Couldn't agree more. But what would you like to see? I think that's the key thing. Any particular UFO incidents, past or present, that you think would make good episodes? Do let us know, everyone. Because we love covering these topics, and something like the alien mummies doesn't come along every day, but there's so many legacy ones that we would love to revisit. Shall we move on to the main topic of this week and talk about the rich bastards?
I'd love to, but before we do, I want to say a massive thank you to all of our Patreon supporters and YouTube members who keep us going all these years. In particular, I'd like to thank
what is going on here?
I don't know what's going on.
Keep it going. No, I think
you
need to keep this going for the entirety of the Patreon list.
Oh no, that would insult and or annoy everybody.
Who's this we've got on the podcast?
Captain Wonky, James, Rashad Najar, Caleb Wilkerson, Kat Jones, John Baker, Henny Ruffle, The Super Show Podcast, Nicholas Dill, Emmett Tapia, Ahmad, Peaswad, Josh Chomatek, Filthy Casual, And Simon Workman. Thank you, all of you. And thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon or as YouTube members. You are wonderful people. And if you do, you get access to our exclusive, a little more interesting mini episodes pretty much every week. There's well over 100 episodes now. For all you newcomers, you'll be able to access all the ones past and future. We don't do present ones, but only past or future. And as well as the occasional behind-the-scenes tidbits of other special videos that we do, documentaries and whatnot. So thank you again to everybody who supports us. And now, Martin, please do take us into the world of the richest gits in history.
Okay, so the richest gits in history. How do we want to do this? Shall we go oldest in time to newest in time? Does that sound good?
Yeah, we could do that.
Oldest to newest. Yeah, let's do it. Gits. That sounds good.
Yeah.
So based on what I think Robin needs to go first then in that case.
Oh yeah. I think I do. So I'm gonna drag you all back to my favorite period, the early medieval period in Britain. And in particular, I'd like to talk to you about William the Conqueror.
God, any excuse to bring up William the Conqueror, and Robin will just jump on it.
Yeah. I mean, in this case,
you're going to meet him.
An appropriate actual place to start in terms of the jokes we're making, because this is a person who was literally known in his lifetime as William the Bastard, because he was born illegitimately. But when you're the son of a powerful man, even if you're illegitimate, born out of wedlock, it doesn't matter, because when you're the only son of that man, he will still make you his heir. And this will happen to William the Conqueror, who was born in around the year 1028, nearly 1,000 years ago. He was the eldest son of Robert I, Duke of Normandy. And in 1035, Robert I died whilst returning from pilgrimage to Jerusalem, making William Duke of Normandy under King Henry I of France at the ripe old age of 7.
So he was fully ready and qualified for the job.
Absolutely. Now, just for a bit of context, it's important for people to know that the dukes of France at this time were essentially mini kings in their own right. You had the King of France, who obviously ruled over what is now France. And the dukes ruled little territories, and Normandy was one of them. And then under the dukes, you'd have barons, and they were the big wealthy landowners and knights and things. And William inherited the title of Duke of Normandy, but because he was so young, immediately led to anarchy, and all the barons of Normandy just went wild and fought each other and took all the wealth and took as much land as they could. And little teenage William was kind of left helpless. But what this did do was instill in him an ambition and a specific desire, which was to restore the power that he had been born into, or rather inherited, and all the revenues due to the person, the Duke of Normandy, that was lost in this anarchy, this period of turmoil that arose when he was a teenager. So obviously, this hunger for power and money just drove him his entire life. And he achieved his success mostly through brute military force. This is how things were done back then.
As the best always do.
Yeah, exactly. And he managed to kind of secure his position against all the rebel barons in Normandy by enlisting the help of the King of France. But the King of France later turned against him between 1054 and 1060. And William, through military prowess, managed to defeat both the King of France and the rebel Norman barons, and completely secured his control of Normandy and conquered other parts of northern France, becoming the most powerful duke in France. So already he's doing pretty well. He then forged an alliance with Baldwin V of Flanders by marrying Baldwin's daughter Matilda, even though the Pope denounced the marriage as incestuous.
Oh, was it? Was it?
Okay.
Well, we don't know, but they must have been related in some like cousins or something. But we don't know the exact relationship.
Is that not just like par for the course for this era? Like just especially in like this kind of upper echelon circle of.
Well, it's possible that the Pope was allied with enemies of William,
Right,
so
okay.
they asked the Pope to complain, and the Pope did. He denounced it as incestuous. But William learned his other trick to success, which is he sponsored monasteries and religious establishments in northern France to win back favor with the Pope. In other words, he paid loads of money to the Pope.
I just had the idea
spent loads of money on the church.
Like, I'm just imagining a church, but like outside is like plastered with like sponsored by William the Conqueror, like sponsored by Castrol, just like
you're
on
not
the side
you're
of
not
the
that far
churches.
off, actually. You're not that far off. They probably did begin a lot of services with, and thanks to our generous patron William the Duke, we shall pray for him. So he's established his two methods for control, which is military success and bribery. This is how it's done. In 1051, he got his cousin, the King of England, Edward the Confessor, who had no children of his own, to promise the throne of England to him. And Edward, by this point, he was about 30 years older than William, so it was clear that Edward was not going to have children. He was getting closer and closer to his death. And it's possible, it's not confirmed, but it's possible that Edward promised the throne to William under duress. And even though, when he did die, Edward eventually appointed his brother-in-law, Harold Godwinson, as his heir, William claimed two things. First, that Edward's promise to him in 1051 took precedence, and secondly, he claimed that Harold Godwinson himself had acknowledged that William was the heir to Edward's throne of England in 1064, even though we're almost certain that Harold only promised this to William when William captured him and held him prisoner in Normandy for a few months. So William's other method for success was to pressure people into doing what you wanted. Then, of course, comes 1066. Edward the Confessor dies. Harold Godwinson becomes king. He fights off an invasion by the King of Norway in northern England. And at the same time, William takes the opportunity to invade the south of England. Harold
Hardrada
pulls off this.
The other dude.
Yeah, Harold Hardrada invaded. That's true.
School.
So Harold Hardrada, King of Norway, invades and gets defeated by Harold Godwinson. Don't confuse the two. But then Harold Godwinson does this amazing maneuver and marches all the way down from the north of England to the south of England to Kent, getting there in time to fight William at the Battle of Hastings, which William only just wins, and only really because Harold gets killed, and that kind of means the battle's over. But it was a brutal day of fighting. Now, William secures his victory by brutally putting down rebellions in England, infamously something called the Harrying of the North, which is a possible genocide of 75% of the population of the north of England. He just wiped out in one campaign to put down rebellion. He replaces all the English nobles with his own Norman ones. He replaces all the English bishops and church leaders with Norman ones. He invades Scotland to keep them compliant. He builds castles everywhere, starting with the Tower of London, famous for its luxury compartments. And of course, he orders the creation of Domesday Book, which is a survey of all the wealth of England. And thanks to Domesday Book, we know exactly how wealthy William was. Now, England was unique at this time for its tax system. It was unique in the sense that it had a tax system. It was unique in that it taxed land wealth. And it was also unique in that it did it pretty efficiently. So because William successfully seized all the land and the wealth from the Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian aristocracy, supplanted them with Normans, and he held Normandy itself, his net worth was equivalent to 2.1% of the world's GDP at the time, which is around...
It's not bad.
It is quite a lot. And that is around $230 billion in today's money.
Whoa.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Which, for context, the wealthiest individuals, according to the Forbes list of billionaires, are Bernard Arnault and his family. So a whole family own $211 billion worth of wealth today. Yeah. They're the wealthiest people in the world today. And William had more money than them combined.
In fairness,
though,
I don't know a huge amount about Bernard Arnault and his family, except that they have a bunch of fashion brands, don't they? They're what are they?
Yeah, that's it.
Is that right?
Louis Vuitton,
Louis
I think
Vuitton,
they own. Yeah.
They didn't have to commit genocide to get that wealth.
No.
Well, yeah, no.
I don't know.
There'll be some skeletons.
There's probably some
in that
skeletons
closet for sure. Oh yeah.
Almost certainly. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of William the Conqueror, but I do admire the simplicity of his his method for success.
He was
driven. Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I don't know. Would you say he's a business genius? This doesn't seem like a business motivated individual, more like a power military might.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the one bit of nous he should be credited with is that he was famously not a good administrator.
Right.
So in this sense, he was a bad ruler. Like what he was good at was conquering. What he wasn't good at was actually ruling. But what he did do instead was appoint people who were good at administrating.
That's what leaders. Well,
yeah,
that's what a lot of people do, isn't it? Finding the right people for the right job, right?
That's good delegation. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah,
very true.
Knowing what you don't know is the cliched, isn't it?
But I do feel like he squandered his wealth a bit, though, in the sense that when you look into the history of it, he, from being a teenager, his goal was to restore the wealth that he was entitled to as the Duke of Normandy, as well as the power, against all these rebels. And the way he achieved that was partially through conquest and partially through bribery. And so he ended up, it seems to me like he ended up with this kind of life choice of, I need to accumulate more wealth to pay off these people in order to keep my wealth. And the whole invasion of England seems partially motivated by this whole, I'm running out of money to secure my rule in Normandy, so I'm going to invade England and promise all this money from a successful invasion of England to these rebels in Normandy. And then that kind of kept on going throughout his career. It was like keeping rebellion down once he'd killed everyone in England. He kept his Norman nobles on side by just giving them loads of money. So in the end, he was kind of, he wasn't poor. Of course he wasn't. He was still the king and he had all this wealth, but he kind of like, he threw away his wealth in order to keep his wealth.
To keep the power. Yeah.
So in fairness, that is the kind of billionaire mindset. It's pretty ruthless, pretty, I mean, you just look at companies like Nestle, they would happily genocide a nation to secure their power. So, fair enough.
You see that water you're drinking? We own that.
What?
Just crazy.
Is that your self-help book for William the Conqueror? The billionaire mindset.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Wouldn't be called The Art of the Deal. Just be The Art of Killing and Bribing Your Opponents.
1066 ways to make £1 billion.
Nice.
I like it.
Very good.
I like it very much. He did. The reason he's that super wealthy and his sons don't count, I think, is because he's divided Normandy and England between them. So one son got Normandy, the other son got England. So as well as giving away a lot of his wealth to keep his opponents on side, he managed to, I guess, secure his place in history as, I think, the wealthiest English monarch or monarch of England, I should say. He wasn't English, was he? By splitting his wealth between his offspring. But yeah, so who have you got? Who have you got brought to the table?
Well, I guess I'm next if we're going chronologically. So you said that he was worth, in the end, William the Conqueror. I mean, it's always difficult to estimate this far back. You can't really judge things from just inflation, like how much were things worth then? Like, I mean, is gold, does that have the same value then as it does now? Probably not. So it's difficult to assess things like that. But you said roughly 240 billion.
230, yeah.
230 billion. So my guy who I want to talk about, historians say he goes a little bit higher than that. A little bit higher, potentially. Oh, yeah. But I mean, at this level, it almost doesn't matter. But he was estimated to have been in possession of a fortune roughly double the size of the richest man alive today, Bernard Arnault and his family, $211 billion. So this man possibly had a fortune worth over $400 billion.
Wow.
And
may I interrupt you for a moment just to say that I honestly, these numbers are just so meaningless to me right now.
Yes.
I just can't comprehend.
And also, I mean, it kind of is meaningless when you go this far back in history, because money, like now, has a sort of different value. You can do different things with it than back then. And also, like, back then, power was almost more important, I'd say, than the wealth. So like I mean, William the Conqueror, it's armies and land. How does that equate to the value now and wealth and stuff? So I don't know. I don't know. It is almost kind of meaningless me saying, yeah, I had a value of 400 billion, because really he was so powerful, he could do whatever the hell he wanted. Like he was, he was, had twice as much money as Bernard Arnault, but he was 100 times more powerful than him. Had 100 times more influence. Do you know what I mean?
104 more friends.
Yeah. So his name was Mansa Musa, and he's possibly the richest man in history. Born almost 750 years ago, he was the Sultan of the Mali Empire. And in fact, that is what Mansa in his name means. Mansa is a job title. It means emperor, emperor or sultan. Yeah. So we don't really hear about the Mali Empire much. I don't know about I don't know about you guys, but we weren't taught about it in school or anything. But
no.
But at its height in the 14th century, the Mali Empire covered almost 500,000 square miles. So it was massive and was home to around 5% of the world's population. And it also rose incredibly quickly in the space of just a couple of generations during what was known as the Golden Age of Trade in Africa. And quite predictably, given the topic, the Mali Empire was built on an unfathomable wealth, which came primarily from two traded goods: gold and salt, both of which were in rich local supply. So much so that at the time, approximately half of all the gold in the old world, so like Europe, Asia, came from just 3 gold mines in Mali.
Yeah, it's a bit of a monopoly on that.
Yeah.
Massive, bit of a monopoly on that. And Mansa Musa was born sometime around 1280 AD, and he came to the throne as the 10th ruler of the Mali Empire in approximately 1312 AD. And it's interesting, his rise to power wasn't really, it didn't seem as dramatic as William the Conqueror, or as kind of bloody or faced with hardship. He was kind of just the placeholder, because his predecessor, this is great, and it's almost like worthy of a video in itself, but his predecessor was Abubakar Keita II, and he abdicated from the throne, or temporarily abdicated from the throne, because he decided what he wanted to do. He was sitting on the biggest pile of gold that had possibly ever been accumulated, and he decided, there's the Atlantic Ocean, I want to see what's on the other side of that. And this was at a time when no one really knew what was over there. I mean, people had theories, people had hunches. So he took 3,000 ships.
Whoa.
And he said to Mansa Musa, here, hold my beer. I'm going to go with BRB. I'm just going to nip over there real quick. Can you keep the seat warm for me? And he left, and he was never, ever seen again. I think there are some historians do actually look at Abubakar Keita II and think there's a chance that he did manage to make it to South America. However, he never returned to Africa, or if he did, maybe Mansa Musa quickly had him taken care of. I don't know. But the point is, history doesn't really know what happened to him after this. Mansa Musa, who was basically just chosen kind of like an accountant. I don't know. He was just like he was just there to hold down
look after the money. It's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just have a check of the finances.
He suddenly ascended to the throne of this vastly wealthy kingdom.
It's crazy.
And he didn't just behave like a placeholder king or leader. He set about expanding the borders of his lands and growing his already vast wealth. So, like, how rich was he really? Let's just have one example. So he was a devout Muslim, and one of his solemn duties, as it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, is to undertake the Hajj, which is a pilgrimage to Mecca. And it's something that, Muslims try and do at least once in their lives, is go on this pilgrimage to Mecca. And so, he did this. He did this in quite a dramatic fashion. He brought along with him on this personal journey to Mecca 60,000 men and women 100 elephants, 80 camels, a personal guard of roughly 500 trained warriors, and enough food, water, and animals to eat for everyone. And
Whoa.
you're now okay. That's you think okay. Well, that
you
doesn't.
can't do this. You can't be with those elephants. Get out. It's busy enough as it is.
Well, you think like that's crazy numbers, but armies have been bigger than that. But this was a 2-year pilgrimage over 2,700 miles across, Africa from Mali, into Mecca. This was a massive, long journey, like one of the craziest kind of pilgrimages the world had ever seen.
So, who was placeholder king whilst he was away for 2 years going to Mecca?
Well, I mean, he wasn't. He was away for a while, but the Mali Empire stretched quite far across the African continent. So, I mean, he left it. He did have to leave his lands eventually, but this was kind of like in a way, he kind of brought his empire with him. He didn't really leave it, did he? He just brought it along for the ride.
Very true.
And also, along with his empire, he brought 21,000 kilograms of solid gold. Well, I say he brought it. He didn't bring it.
Yeah. He's not carrying shit.
He brought it was his 12,000 slaves that he also brought with him carried the gold.
Mm.
Are they included in the 60,000 people? Or are they additional to the 60,000 people?
Do you know what? I'm not 100% sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were additional.
That's pretty mad, isn't it? Like, Diane, can you just put together like a guest list for our trip to Mecca, please? Yeah, how many are you thinking? I don't know, 60,000? 50,000?
Yeah, and I'd kind of like to leave tomorrow, if that's cool.
Elephants. Yeah, great. We'll have some elephants too. Brilliant.
The gold is fascinating too. It's just like, how do you reach that number? Just like, I'm going to take, I think I'll take some gold, maybe, 21,000 tons of it. Yeah.
Just in case.
$100 billion.
I bet it was like
you've got to prepare your travel money, your holiday spending,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was definitely planned to trade some of it, I'm sure.
Yeah. But I mean, the gold did have a purpose, and it wasn't, you might be surprised to hear, for him. The gold, he wanted to give it away because another tenet of Islam is zakat is another pillar of Islam, to give alms to charitable causes. So he didn't bring the gold for himself. He brought it to give away on his trip.
Okay.
Unfortunately, this backfired a little bit. Okay. Because on his way to Mecca, he gave so much gold to the poor that Mansa Musa single-handedly crashed the price of the commodity across most of North Africa and the Western Arabian Peninsula, including major trading cities like Cairo, Medina, and Mecca itself, precipitating a decade-long recession.
What? That's mad. I mean, I guess, you give some bloke on the street. Oh, yeah,
that's incredible.
He just devalued all of their currencies by bringing so much gold along.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
He also did something else quite dramatic on this trip as well. This is just, an example of his exuberant wealth. So he started a kind of tradition that every Friday, no matter where he was on this trip, pizza and beers, just to say thanks. He had a pizza. He was the first example of a corporate stooge giving a pizza party at the end of the week. No, he would build a mosque wherever he was.
Oh my gosh.
Given this was a 2-year trip, that was a lot of mosques he built.
Yeah. Hence the 60,000 people.
Yeah.
You stay here and build the mosques. We're just moving on.
Yeah.
Also, on the way back from Mecca, he just annexed Timbuktu, and he just came across it and was like, "This is nice. I guess it's mine. I guess it's mine.
Like this. I'll take it."
Yeah. That's great. But he turned Timbuktu into one of the most important centers for trade, culture, religion, and learning around the world at that time. It was like quite a massive epicenter. And historians think that this trip, yes, it was quite altruistic and like he was trying to give away gold, but it was also a kind of PR marketing stunt, like a massive PR marketing stunt for him.
A giveaway.
And the Mali Empire was quite early at this point, and it was almost a way to put it on the map and to entice smart people from around the world to make the Mali Empire their home, and it did that. It accomplished that. People came and studied and traded with the Mali
That's
Empire.
really weird.
And
to think of a medieval ruler thinking in those terms.
Or
of attracting talent, brains, rather than might.
I think one of the only one of the only kind of depictions of Mansa Musa is on this world map, the Catalan world map. I can't remember when it was dated, but you see him and he's basically just sitting on a pile of gold, looking like an absolute boss.
Of course,
and that's kind of like the impression that he wanted to give. I think this immense amount of wealth, and I mean, he did exactly that, didn't he? He showed it off. He had basically, we can say he had approximately $400 billion, which is about the GDP of Norway or Ireland, just to put that in perspective. But in truth, it didn't really matter, did it? He could do whatever he wanted.
This is like those comedies, like the one with John Goodman. Is it called King Ralph or something? Or like Richie Rich, where just a random, not Richie Rich, but a random person becomes Dave, like an ordinary guy becomes president, and he's like, I'm going to fix the system because through this quirk I've become president. And this is like the real life version of that. Like random guy becomes king of the Mali Empire, or emperor, I should say, and then is like, I'm going to do all this awesome stuff because I've never had this power before, and I don't have the burden of having to inherit my wealth and maintain the monarchy and think about future generations of my family. I'm just gonna fix the world as I see it. That's incredible.
And it's quite like, it seems like he didn't really have that kind of brutal like mindset to get to this point. It's not like billionaires are psychopaths, right? You have to be a psychopath to be a billionaire.
yeah.
Whereas like he just kind of like you said, just inherited this. Like and then he was, at the very least, he was like, from moral standards at the time, he was trying to do good things. He was trying to, he was building mosques. He was giving away gold. He was trying to entice the world's most intelligent people to his lands. He was trying to do good things, according to what, the time anyway. I think in a different set of circumstances, there could have been a pretty awful situation in the Mali Empire at this time. And instead they just got a guy who went on a massive long bender to Mecca. But anyway, that was Mansa Musa.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Alex. And definitely when we're thinking about, that is definitely one of the richest people in history, no doubt. And I'm taking a little bit of liberty with mine. This is a very rich person, but it's not nearly the richest in history. But it was a very rich woman in the 19th century, which was a little bit, more rare.
It's rare today, so
and they were in fact still a billionaire if you adjusted for inflation today. So I'm talking about Hetty Green, Henrietta Green, who was also known as the Witch of Wall Street.
The Witch of Wall Street.
That's what people called her. And she was
need to get what's his name, Scorsese, on a sequel to The Wolf of Wall Street.
I think Leonardo DiCaprio will play Hetty Green in the movie.
I mean, we're joking. So, I can see this happening, like just from the title.
The Witch of Wall Street. I like it. And she was from Massachusetts, but lived in New York most of her life. Okay. And so she wasn't a self-made billionaire, of course, unlike Donald J. Trump. No, I'm joking. But she started with a similar inheritance. She started with a $7 million inheritance, and then her aunt died as well a few years later, and she got a $2 million estate. So a little bit of a nice kind of head start in terms of her wealth.
And that seems like a big head start in these
big head start,
with adjusted for inflation as well. I guess that must be massive amounts of money.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of her job or her the way she accumulated more wealth, It wasn't particularly interesting. I've got to be honest. It was like investments. It was high scale investments, and you think of it as being quite simplistic. But basically, what she did was she bought certain investments, especially in like the railroad and in discounted Civil War bonds as well. And she bought them low and sold high, quite simply. And this was, as I say, around the time of the Civil War. She was born in 1834 and died in the early 20th century. I think 1916 was when she died. So,
quite long lived.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, she was incredibly rich. And I think partly the reason why she was given this name of the Witch of Wall Street was because she was a very, very rich woman in New York at this time. And so there were all kinds of stories that flew around about her. Some of them were potentially true. The fact that she was not very good in terms of hygienic, and like one of the descriptions was that she wore a dress that was smothered, like, it's not smothered, but smeared in like mayonnaise quite a lot of the time, like old rotting mayonnaise.
Oh my God!
Sounds absolutely disgusting.
You're
right?
a billionaire, Hetty.
Exactly.
Have a
and she
shower.
was unbelievably thrifty in terms of her clothes.
That's ridiculous.
Wore her dresses until they completely were threadbare and never turned on the heating or the hot water.
What?
Which probably sounds like quite a few people's parents, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in favour of wearing clothes till they wear out, but not like literally threadbare. You have to replace them at a decent point, or at a point before it becomes indecent.
Exactly. But there are other rumors.
Thing is great.
Yeah, I know. But it's difficult to the lines of fiction and fact here get a little bit blurred. And one of the accusations against her, one of the darker accusations against her, was despite having all of these riches, over $200 million back then, a billionaire in today's money, was that her son injured his leg, and she refused to pay the medical bills to get his leg seen to, which then eventually required an amputation.
Wow!
Oh my gosh!
So didn't treat her son that well, and going back to the hot water thing, didn't turn on the hot water or the heating in the house for her children, etc., etc.
She has so many stereotypes in fantasy fiction of the super wealthy.
I know, right?
Children's books and things. She's actually real. This is crazy.
I know. But the question is, how much of this is fact and how much of this is fiction?
I see.
And those close to her had a different nickname for her. They called her the Queen of Wall Street.
Huh.
And this was due to the fact that she lent to various different people, and not at extortionate rates like a lot of other very wealthy people at the time. And so she wasn't just she didn't rip people off. She wasn't a bit of a scandalous rich person. She wasn't a rich bastard in that sense. And I mean, at the time, a lot of the people who were these rich businessmen, wore their fancy suits and had really lavish lifestyles at this time. And so quite a lot of it was the exaggeration of the way that she looked and the way she acted, because she just wasn't like that.
Right.
And really a very different perspective. So these rumors, of course, went around, and she actually responded to them in her lifetime.
Okay.
So she was portrayed pretty negatively in the media, but something that she said was this: "It has turned out that my life is written for me down in Wall Street by people who, I assume, do not care to know one iota of the real Hetty Green. I am in earnest, therefore they picture as heartless. I go my own way, take no partners, risk nobody else's fortune, therefore I am Madame Ishmael, set against every man." And then she says, "I don't think society means what some rich people would have us believe. I should get very tired of living in one of those great houses in New York, going out all night and sleeping all day. They don't have any real pleasures." And so,
I like her.
Yeah, she was very. I mean, she certainly stood up on her own 2 feet, no doubt. So her perception of her wealth and the way in which it should be portrayed was very different to others at the time. And so I think that, I mean, it's difficult to verify the whole thing about her son, apart from the fact that he did lose his leg, but how much of that was actually due to her, not taking the right steps to get him seen to, how much of it was about other factors. It's the hearsay. And we've seen this before, actually. There's been a few cases, especially when we looked at the most evil woman in history, if you guys remember, of a couple of examples around the same time of supposedly evil women who were said to have, eaten children or the rest, tortured people in their houses.
Yeah.
Who, in fact, when you look at the other side of it, it's like, yeah, but they probably, or, they might not have done these terrible things. It's just, it's a lot of it's hearsay, and the media picks up on it and goes crazy. So,
do you think
anyway,
do you think it's a lot of like men in Wall Street that just kind of she was a bit different, going against the grain, and so they kind of portrayed her in this way?
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
sad,
A
isn't
reputation.
I don't know. I feel it's a little far-fetched to suggest that men in history have been harsh on women.
I mean, yeah, women for as long as we've been around have had it easy. Surely,
Yeah,
surely.
yeah.
If only
they're so well looked
if only
after by us,
white
men.
men can get just a leg up, just
Yeah.
we need a break.
Yeah.
Come on.
Poor woman.
Yeah.
Although the flip
Well,
side
not
of
poor
that,
woman.
Yeah, the
the
opposite
flip
of
side of
poor
that.
woman, I guess.
Yeah. There is something that would suggest that perhaps what happened with her son might have been true.
Oh no, Martin, this is a roller coaster. I don't know which side to be on.
And this is to do with her own death.
Right.
And so in her old age, she was in her 80s, I think. Yeah, in her 80s. She developed a hernia herself, but refused to have it operated on.
Oh.
Preferred using a stick to press down on the swelling.
That's an option, I guess.
it is an option, and this. She actually eventually died of her strokes, but her health got much worse as her inability to move around, due to these mobility issues, got worse over time. So she died age 81, 1916, and she was actually entered into the Guinness Book of World Records, the world's greatest miser. So being a bit of a misery gut, but actually, it's potentially not true. They potentially made an error there. So I thought I'd bring it to the forefront, not for necessarily being the richest, but possibly being one of the most misunderstood, very rich people of the 20th century, 19th and 20th
I'd never heard of
centuries.
her.
No, neither.
So
Neither.
hang on, I'm sorry. They were like, "You've got a hernia. We can take it out if you want." And she was like, "No, that's cool. I've got a stick."
No, I got a stick. I'll just push on it a bit. Yeah.
What?
So-
I'm so confused. by
Looks
that.
directly
I
at
don't
her
know.
amputee son. It's just like, I with at least 2 legs. He's like, Mommy, you weren't there for me when I needed. Oh my gosh.
It might be that at the time she just didn't trust, medical
science.
practitioners because it was
That's
a
more
very,
like
very
it,
different
yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Because
I mean, also there are
operation
people like
and-
that today, right? Not just
Steve Jobs.
like everything about her. Yeah, there are people like that
Yeah,
today
true.
who don't trust, will not look after themselves properly in terms of hygiene, and they can be very successful in business. It's because it's so focused on it. Yeah. Did she ever? Do we know if she gave much to charity?
She was a Quaker, so I believe that she gave some to the church.
Yeah.
And and as I say, she lent it. I think she did there was quite philanthropy, but it was never a big deal for her. It was never shouted about. And of course, if that's the case, then others don't shout about it either. So, so it's probably kept under wraps if there was lots of it. But it seems like there was a level of that. But she wasn't known as being like a major giver or philanthropist. She was pretty shrewd. But at the same,
just curious because of the miser title.
well, yeah,
Book of
true,
Records, yeah.
true.
William the Conqueror, I forgot to mention this, was known for the time as being an unusually pious ruler, which is code for giving money to the church, which can be considered charity or not, depending on what you think charity is.
I mean, at that time, is it not also like you're just investing in your afterlife? You're You're making
Yep,
sure you
that
get a
is
good
definitely
seat
that.
in the
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
upstairs.
it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Important,
Absolutely.
important. Oh yeah, and another fact actually, I forgot to mention this, but when she
yeah.
died in 1916, she was worth 2.5 times the amount as J.P. Morgan, who's of course known for being incredibly wealthy.
That's
So
amazing.
just to put in a bit of
Wow.
perspective
Wow.
about
Yeah.
how rich she actually was.
Again, crazy that I've never heard of her.
I know,
But everyone's
mad,
heard of
right?
JP Morgan.
Mhm.
PR.
I think it's
Wow.
because her investments were kind of pretty boring. It was like, oh yeah, just railroad stocks. Like, I'm going to buy low when people don't want this shit and sell it when it's high. And it's
Right.
kind of, I don't think there was too much nuance in
That's just like, yeah,
in
that's
what she did.
buy low,
And she
sell
didn't
high.
make real
That's
estate.
like, that's day one business stuff. And she
Exactly.
just
Yeah,
went with it.
yeah.
Nice.
So I think she dealt with like buying up mortgages and had some investments in mines and in real estate and that kind of thing, but nothing that was kind of particularly interesting or revolutionary. But just like a good amount of money from a inheritance and then invested it well.
Is it like today's, like equating them to today's billionaires? She wasn't an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whatever. She was more just like Warren Buffett type thing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Didn't Warren Buffett say like, if he had an investment strategy for his own wife, it would just be to put it all in index funds, right? So tracking the whole index really quite safe, as opposed to betting on stocks, which is quite interesting because he's kind of made a lot of his fortune by, betting on stocks, basically. Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, so there we go. 3 very rich people with very different stories.
What would you guys do if you were a billionaire?
Billionaire. I mean, billionaire is different.
No, I mean,
just a bit of money, isn't it?
Okay, what if you inherited? I don't want to say the exact same.
£100.
If you inherited £100, what would you do? No, let's say something crazy. Let's say like if Elon Musk gave you his entire fortune and went to Mars. Let's bring that scenario into this. What would you do with Elon Musk money? I think he's worth 180 billion, or maybe less now after the whole Twitter thing. 110 billion. If you were given 110 billion pounds,
this is going down gradually, quite quickly. 110. I mean, if you were given it as well, there was no kind of presumption of earning any of it. You would have to give the absolute vast majority away, wouldn't you, and make a difference in the world.
So what would
you have to? It'd be immoral not to.
Sure, but what would be your like? How would you
be the strategy?
What would be your strategy to do the most amount of good, and where would your efforts be? Like,
I'd absolutely invest in green energy and food relief for the destitute parts of the world, and world peace. You can buy that, right? But I would also I'd keep a significant portion for myself, and I would literally make my own movies, just turn up, be my own Hollywood studio.
I mean, the thing is,
Kim Jong-il,
you could keep 1% of that, and your children and your children's children will never have to work again.
Yeah, exactly. So much money. Yeah. You could absolutely solve the world's problems.
100 billion. Yeah, you have over £1 billion. Yeah, crazy money, crazy money, and then I'd get a Deliveroo. So.
I think that's an interesting comment that we can. If you're listening to us or watching us on YouTube, let us know what you would do if you were just handed the reins to the Musk empire. If you were just given like 110 billion pounds or dollars or whatever, what would you do with it? What would you do with that money?
I'd definitely rebrand.
I'd be interested.
Rebrand all of his stuff.
Profitable. I'm interested.
I'll rebound all of his bollocks, his ex bollocks, and just either make it Twitter or something that's a dig at him. That'd be fun. Just as a bit of fun. Yeah. He's like, "Well, I've given you 110 billion dollars." I'm like, "Yeah, but now you're poor and you don't have any power anymore, Elon. So now the tables have turned." Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm not sure. There'd be so much pressure, responsibility, and for your own security as well. I'd be watching my back all the time. I think I have to have security there the whole time. Ugh.
But also, it's like how
like an ex-president.
How would you stretch it to do the most amount of like good? Or could you just buy with if you had that amount of like money on hand? Could you just buy like Exxon and just shut it down?
I mean, it's funny. That was kind of the first thing that came to my mind. Could you like buy the oil and just stop it being used?
Yeah, because then like you're not investing in green, but you've bought all of the oil in the world and then just like kept it to yourself so no one else can have it. So they have to go green. Go green or just not have energy.
That thing is that is where we are. I think that's the only way to stop. Well, every climate activist will tell you what we need to do to try to prevent catastrophe from happening is stop using fossil fuels immediately. And it's our structures and our addiction to it that means so the only way to actually do that is to take that proactive negative action and just be the person to hoard it.
Yeah.
But obviously,
not a bad idea.
You would crash the world economy when
you would crash. Yeah, you would. Yeah.
But you'd be all right because you're a billionaire, multi-billionaire.
Well, they might not be worth much for too much longer. Yeah.
Pretty sure some people would come and knock on your door and shoot you in the face if you just held all of the world's oil ransom.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then somehow your will would redistribute back to all the world's wealthiest people and politicians. Very generous of us to write that will. Yeah, definitely did that.
If they're shooting you in the face, I don't think they're going to obey the rules of whatever will you've got in place.
That's a good point. That's
That's good.
Well, thank you, gents.
Sorry.
Apologies. Go for it.
So it's like the idea of there's someone in this major conspiracy to assassinate you and take all the oil who's like, no, guys, the will, legit. We've got to make this forgery good. We've got to work within the system. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all right. No, please do carry on. In fact, we will carry on, and you can join us for a little bit more of us, if you want to, over at our Patreon page, where we do episodes of a little more interesting, where we talk about more off the beaten track type topics that you might not get on the main podcast. So do join us over there if you want to. If not, we will see you in next week's episode, and until then, have a wonderful time.
Martin.
Oh, the riddle.
I don't know the answer to the riddle.
Okay. Do you want to hear it again?
Yeah, well, I think
please. It was a nice poem.
I might have the answer this time, so I wanted to.
Okay, I'll read it again for the folks back home. I'm a word of letters 3. Add 2, and fewer there will be. What am I?
I have an idea.
Okay.
Is it few?
It's few.
Oh, nice.
Add 2 and fewer I will be.
Nice.
Very good. Very good. Nice. Well done.
That's good.
Nice riddle.
That's so much. Yeah. The best I could do was think of 1 and then add no to the front of it. No one.
I mean, it's
no
not
one.
To be fair,
that's.
I think fewer is better. Fewer is better.
Yes, because few I will be. Yeah, few. Yeah.
She answers in the question. Of course.
Indeed. It is. Oh, good stuff. All right, guys. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful week, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.